Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Hardcore. I'm Chell, that's Miko across the world. Hey girly, what's up?
Hey.
We are continuing our, let's call it a series at this point, because we've done a couple of episodes. You guys have listened to a couple of episodes on kind of just going through all of the types and talking about something different with each of the types. Initially, we had a theme. Now I just feel like we're talking about like one major point with all of the types. So today we're talking about manifestors and manifestation in different positions, whether it be entrepreneurship or leading in a company, and just manifestation and leadership in general for manifestors.
Sounds good. I'm excited to hear your point of view on this.
I just like paused for dramatic effect, I think, and then you were just like, okay, cool, take us away, Chell. Sounds good.
Yep.
Yeah, so I've definitely had experience in both of these side of things. So I think coming from, granted, take this with my perspective from being an ego manifester, right? Like it can be vastly different for someone who has a different authority. So please take that into account when I'm explaining from my POV the experiences that I've had. But I would say as a manifester, there is just this innate leadership that is within. And again, maybe that's some of the six line coming through. It probably is. But even child me was a leader, right? Like all of like the parent teacher conferences back in the day, like the feedback was great student, conditioned, let's be real, heavily conditioned, and that is like a heart, the desire to do the things and be the things and not disappoint my parents. So that's a whole different can of worms. But the reports were like great student, natural born leader, role model, right? So I think that that's very interesting that even as a kid that was something that was innate. So if you are a manifester, kind of think back to being a kid and maybe parent teacher conferences or maybe like what your parents' friends were saying about you, right? Because that I think can show you that you probably had that skill set, that leadership skill set as a kiddo. And maybe you still have it now. Awesome. That means you weren't heavily conditioned. But if it's something that you're not feeling comes as innate within you, try and explore that and maybe where external forces changed you up a little bit and maybe conditioned you elsewhere or to be a generator, right? Because that happens too, right? Like running as an MG or running as a manifesting, or rather running as a generator or a manifesting generator rather than a manifester. We're not here to do all the things all the time forever. So all of that to say is let's break down some jobs that let's break down some different opportunities where leadership can kind of expand outward as a manifester. I think the top three qualities of a job that allows a manifester to have his or her powers amplified and enhanced and make the biggest impact is one where you are not directly like micromanaged by someone. One where you have the ability to kind of create your own path and make impact in your own way, obviously with other people's support. And then the third piece of it is one where you're really passionate about the what you're doing, right? Like it can be any topic that you're passionate about. We're going to talk about manifestors in a wide variety of different jobs. But I think distilling it down, those are the top three like qualities that I prefer in a job as a manifester. And again, take this with a grain of salt, just me being like that being a personal preference. But I think needing to be in that leadership role is super key, and a leadership role that allows a ton of flexibility, whether that be time flexibility or like actual flexibility in the role, I think is really important. And flexibility to kind of just like spread your wings and fly, because that's what it's about. And then helping and having a team around you to help execute it. Oh my God, we could do a totally different episode on building a team, but let's not go there right now. What are your thoughts on this so far before I go down another rabbit hole?
Yeah, I think also observing you, you've described it pretty well what suits you and what doesn't suit you. And one of the things I think that are also key for manifestors is they don't really like to be told what to do. So that is why you keep mentioning leadership positions, because a manifestor doesn't like it when someone tells them to do this, this, and that. And it's one of the main ways for a manifestor to go about their life, which we haven't spoken about yet, but I'm sure you would get to that soon, is the strategy of informing. And I think what is often misunderstood by a lot of manifestors is that when you first tell them that, you need to inform people about your actions, they often interpret it as requesting permission or asking for permission. And that is not at all what that is. Informing someone is not the same as asking for permission, and this would be going back to this point that manifestors don't like to be told what to do, and they also don't like to ask for permission. It's more of a, if your inner voice is telling you, okay, this is what I want to do, you just have to tell people about it first, and then you can go out and do it.
Not gonna lie, sometimes it's more of like a, hey, just so you know, I'm doing this kind of thing.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think this is also the conditioning piece that is so heavy in manifestors, because manifestors, when they're kids, they are often trying to do things that they want to do, like, for example, climb a tree, or just things that also seem very dangerous in some aspects sometimes. And of course, you have to, as a parent, you have to figure out, okay, what is actually dangerous and what is not so dangerous. And many things you just need to trust your manifestor child with, and be like, okay, just tell me before you're doing the things. And then most of the time the parents will actually be okay with it, because it's not life-threatening, okay?
Yeah, I think empowering your child as a parent, right? If you have a manifestor kid, empowering them with the ability to do things, but informing you along the way and informing others along the way can go a really long way, I think, and not condition your kid to be an MG or a generator. I think that's the real differentiation piece, right? Like, giving them a safe space to tell you things. I think that's huge.
Totally agree with that. And that goes with every single child out there, no matter what type you are or what type of children you have.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally agree with you. So would you take us down the next rabbit hole?
Happily. Let's start with the position where, like, you're in a company, right? Because I think that there are probably more people who work for someone rather than who are entrepreneurs. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe we'll take a vote in this episode on Spotify and we'll see how many entrepreneurs we have out there versus how many people work for someone else. But let's just go with what probably is the norm. You have a position for someone else. And I think in those positions, you will naturally rise up the ranks, right? Like, if you're doing what you love and it's out of, I don't know, and it was an aligned decision that you made and you went into this company with, right? You will probably naturally rise up the ranks. They're going to see that leadership ability and that leadership quality inherently within you. And again, as long as you're kind of staying true to that strategy, your authority of informing, and maybe that's like informing of improvements, and maybe that's the way that you're kind of being seen and impacting those around you. You're going to be impacting those around you regardless, but maybe that's the next phase, right? You're probably going to rise up in leadership pretty quickly, pretty inherently. And I think in that position, you will shine, right? Because then you will have others who are working with you. I don't want to say under you, but working with you to complete the tasks. So inherently, there's going to be far less pressure on you as the manifestor. Because I don't know about you, Miko, but like not having a sacral, like having that consistent energy, it can be real rough having to do all of it. And I've been in a lot of like physical labor jobs. Like I've been in hospitality in and out of it for like the last decade plus, you know? So the physical job aspect of it, I find wears me out a lot more than like the planning, like the bigger picture piece of it, if that makes sense. So I think one, you probably have to start at the bottom somewhere where there is more physical labor potentially in the job that you're choosing. But being recognized, being seen, informing, and kind of just being you, you'll kind of inherently, naturally get into these leadership positions where you do have the ability then to allow your skill set to truly shine, to create teams, to form teams of people who can support you. Because that's really what it's all about, right? It's you supporting the company when you're working for someone else, but it's also having a team to support you. And I find, in particular in the position that I'm in now, that it's so imperative to have support from up above and support from down below as like middle level management.
Yeah, you've really done a lot of sacral jobs, I would say, as well.
Yeah.
Especially the personal chef one. I think to me it sounds insane, the amount of work that you put in there. So I'm very happy to see that you have a team now that you can more or less rely on, mostly rely on, and that you have all of this sacral energy supporting you, and you can basically just guide them. Okay, this is what I see, where I see your potential, and placing them in the right spots.
It's really interesting. So I know most of my staff's design, and they're all generators and manifesting generators, which I think is very interesting. I can also, with like not even knowing their designs, I could have pointed out who's a manifesting generator and who's a generator by how like Energizer Bunny they are when we're busy. It's so interesting to see that in action, like in a restaurant setting.
I can only imagine. Also, yeah, the other day you were telling me about the projector and the reflector, the reflector and the manifesting generator and the energy exchange that they were experiencing. And to me, it's, yeah. We're not going to get into detail here, but it's just when you know someone's design and in a whole team, nonetheless, it's just fascinating.
Yeah, it's really cool to see that come together. So I have another manifestor who I know through a friend who works in shoes, like works for like a running shoe company, and again is in a leadership role within this running shoe company and doesn't feel exhausted in her day to day because one, it's a job she loves. She's able to make an impact on like the marketing piece of it, and that's where her passion lies. So I think this is, I don't have very much more detail than that, but has a team under her, middle level management, gets to travel, right? So it's a job that really incorporates a lot of what she loves into it. And granted, there's stress with every job, right? Like find me a stress-free job and I'm all about it. But does there fulfillment, right? Is there fulfillment with it? So anyway, what I'm trying to say is in that role, she succeeded and is currently succeeding because one, it's a job she loves. She has a team that she trusts, and there's so much more scope for her within that space. And I believe she's like a 5'1". Don't quote me on that, but I don't know much more than that. But yeah, so I think that there is definitely space for a manifestor in the corporate world, in like a smaller business, as long as there's passion for you behind it, and as long as you're not in the day-to-day grind of it forever.
Yeah, definitely. And while we're speaking about all of this, something important to bear in mind is that even profile, even as you mentioned at the beginning, the inner authority, so for you, for example, leadership is a big theme in your chart. It may not be for everyone, for every manifestor out there. So there's a lot that you always need to take into consideration when we're talking about these things, because they can vary when looking at your personal chart.
Definitely. On the other side of the spectrum, right? You may not feel aligned working for someone else. And that's totally fair too, right? Regardless of your design type, you may not feel aligned working for someone else, and you may want to do something on your own and make an impact with others on your own. And I've done both. So giving you some perspective, entrepreneurship is a lot regardless of your design type, right? Like you literally have to wear every hat, from janitor to marketer to whatever your actual job is, and do it well, especially if you're just starting out, right? So that's not to say that it's not doable, but it's a lot. I find that if my heart isn't in it, I can't do it. And that's, again, my design specifically. So there are times where I have these like big, awesome plans, and it works the first time I launch it. And then the second time, third time, it just peters off completely. And in part, I think it's just not the right time, right? Like timing was off, but also if my heart's not in it, it's not going to come through on the other side, right? So that's the personal struggle that I've seen happen with solopreneuring. I think that's a word, as a manifestor, right? Like not having a team to be able to sustain that, I've found to be extremely challenging. However, ways to get around that is collaborations and working with other people who do have different energy, who can sustain that, right? Like I really love spaces where I have a projector, a manifesting generator, and a generator in addition to myself working on a project, because I find that it just goes more smoothly. There's someone who always has the steam to be able to push the steam engine forward and like onto the next step. So even if you are a solopreneur, not at the entrepreneur level yet as a manifestor or as a non-sacral being, getting into spaces, whether it be a paid for space where you're working with a business coach that you really, really trust, vet them out, or you're just working with other solopreneurs that you know, who you know have different design types and can kind of keep the ball rolling for you. Those are ways that I've found to be extremely helpful. So it doesn't feel like you're doing it all, and it does feel like you have support. The only caveat to that is that you are still doing most of the work yourself, and it can feel exhausting as an entrepreneur, solopreneur. So again, doable, but I think getting past those first stages and getting onto the level of entrepreneurship where you can afford a team is probably most ideal for a manifestor. Before I go on to that, thoughts?
Agreed. No, I agree that it is very helpful to have individuals around you that have the sacral energy, and especially when they are in your space, and from time to time at least, so that you can kind of share their energy, and then you can go apart again and then come together again. But also what we have spoken about regarding me and you is that we're still defining the sacral. So even a projector and a manifestor that don't have the sacral defined, they can still also generate that energy, as long as, for example, for the manifestor, they are feeling at peace, or they have this peaceful feeling, and also the ability and the ability to make an impact. Those things are very important for a manifestor, and for the projector, it would be to feel successful and to feel seen. So these things need to be a given for that sacral energy to also come into play.
Really good points. Forgot the dope ass energy that you and I make together. Yeah. Forgot about that. Yeah. So I guess I do actually have one example of a manifestor entrepreneur who during school, so she's a registered dietitian because I'm a registered dietitian, and that's the population that I was working with for such an extended period of time, that those are the examples that I have. So she's a registered dietitian, was going through school. Okay. 5-1 emotional MG, or sorry, 5-1 emotional manifestor. Apologies. So was going through school, like doing her internship, which is required to become a dietitian, and then also launched her business at the same time. Started working with a business coach whose Oh, I believe she's a 2-4 emotional generator. I love that I know everyone's design. I believe she's a 2-4 emotional generator. And like working in that program, this girl, the 5-1 emotional manifester, just went for it. Launched her own business, started seeing clients almost immediately after getting her after getting her licensure. And I don't know how much she was making, but I would say within like the first year, she broke 6 figures, which is wild. Yeah. And that was like through the hustle, through it all. Then toned back that side of the business, like working one-on-one with clients, and went into business coaching. So higher ticket items, fewer people, to kind of offset the amount of work that she was doing, the amount of people that she was working with, which I think became a lot more sustainable for her. And my understanding, I think she's still a solopreneur. She may have like a virtual assistant, but everything she does is still solopreneur-y, and high ticket items like retreats and stuff. But again, it's fewer people, higher ticket, and that's kind of I feel like every business coach does that, but that's what's been sustainable for her, which I think is really interesting. Again, I don't really get 5 lines. That's just a running theme in my life. So good for you, boo boo. But I just thought that was an interesting way of seeing it, right? Because sometimes you're building a business to make an impact with others, but you're not thinking about the sustainability aspect of it for yourself. But for her, it was really build it. Okay, I can't handle it. Let's revise, tone down, make it sustainable. Yeah. And then I think she also had some like smaller packages that were just like a click and buy kind of situation. So that's the one example of straight up solopreneur. And I also have an example of another dietitian who did all of that flying solo and then brought in a team. So also happens to be another 5-1 emotional manifester. I don't know how I know all of them. I know all of the 5-1 emotional manifestors who are dietitians. This one has had multiple businesses, which is really cool to see different pieces of it come together. Ended up not being a dietitian for a while, working with her husband in IT, and wanted to make an impact and like grow a business of her own, which so manifestory. Love that. So she went back into being a dietitian in sports specifically, so working with athletes, and built that up, I think, in like a year. I would love to see if all of these ladies have like either the marketing line or the money line, right? I would just love to see that. I don't remember their charts offhand. Nonetheless, built that business up in like a year, and then again broke off into business coaching. So hired someone else who's actually a projector dietitian to run the sports side of things. Love a good manifestor projector relationship. I just feel like it works so well. Am I right?
Totally.
But yeah, so hired a projector to take over the sports side of the business, then business coached herself, like became a business coach herself, and started out with just small packages, and like video recorded all of them. So then they were easily accessible on the website, marketed the crap out of all of those, and then was just getting like residual income from all of them, and getting people into her world, which again, I feel like is a typical business coach like vibe of like things do, like the way to like build a business, right? Like, oh, what's your small package? What's your larger package? But it doesn't work for every type. And I feel like that's really necessary to like explain, because it doesn't work for everyone, but it's put out there as in like, this is marketing gold, right? So I think that that's really important to note, that I've seen it not work for other people. But going back to this example, is put out all of those small packages, built up her reputation. Again, both 5 lines. So I feel like that was like the putting yourself out there, leadership kind of just exudes from both of these examples. And then started selling higher ticket items, working with people, keeping them in her world, which is so important when you're an entrepreneur, solopreneur, whatever. And has again continued to see success. And that was probably 3 years ago that she went from just selling these smaller packages, I think in like 2020, okay, so 4 years ago, selling these smaller packages to now being like a $20,000 coach, which I think there's some gross MLM stuff happening in there. But my point is that if you are passionate about what you're doing, if you're getting a download as a manifestor and it's something that aligns with your authority, your strategy, you're going to do it and it's going to be impactful. So all of that to say is you can make a really huge impact, but it always breaks back down to, was this download a yay or a nay? Did I run it through my inner authority? And like, again, if you're splenic, that's going to happen real quick. You got to listen for it. If you're emotional, wait out that wave. If you have a defined ego, are you having a Care Bear heart pull, right? All of that is super important to determining if that next step is the right step. But that's what I got. Thoughts.
So good. I hope all the manifestors out there listen to this episode so they kind of get a better understanding of what it means to be a manifestor in work life. So for this episode, we focused on work life in different aspects of, if you want to be a solopreneur, entrepreneur, or even employee in some way, maybe in a bigger company and then being the head of a team in some way. However, that is often a bit of a challenge because large companies often require a lot of hours from individuals. So that can be very taxing for manifestors. Even if it's not physical labor work, if you're still going to be working 10 hours a day on creating project outlines or just mental things that you may be doing in a company, it can still be extremely taxing and it will run you down at some point. So just be mindful of that.
I can tell you snacks help, full meals help, staying hydrated really helps, not too much coffee.
Oh yeah, the coffee thing. So that is often something that non-sacral beings fall into. They fall into the coffee trap. So just a quick side note, which probably a lot of you listening, if you're a manifestor or a non-sacral being, just make sure that you're keeping the coffee consumption to a minimum. Like, don't overdo it. Don't drink 5 cups of coffee a day. It's really not good for you because you're not running on your own energy. This is not the right kind of energy. Of course, you can have a cup here and there, but just, keep it on the low side of things.
I think I thought I was a manifesting generator in college because I had at least like 5 cups a day just to function. And then I'd fall asleep in my last class of the day, like 12 hours in. Yeah.
My
it was
God.
rough.
Yeah.
And I sat in the front row too. So dumb.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
I was ballsy, I know.
What happened?
You know, man, life happens. All right, guys. Well, that was a fun episode. I feel like you and I teach very differently, but hopefully you guys enjoy our very different teaching styles. Yeah. Tune in next week to see, I don't know what we're going to talk about. Very exciting times here.
Thank you for explaining everything so well, Celestina, and for giving some insights in work positions for manifestors. To me, it was very interesting to hear your side and also these examples. Leave us a comment or just let us know how you felt about this episode and all the other episodes as well if you want to continue listening and you haven't done so yet. And we hope to see you next time. Thank you so much for listening.
Ciao, guys.